Hey everyone, can you hear me? All right, there we go. So my talk today is on Sybil-resistance, which is something that I know deeply about from my work at Gitcoin DAO. So I'm going to talk about why Sybil-resistance is an important problem for this space to address. I'm going to characterize the Sybil-resistance game that I've seen at Gitcoin DAO, and then we are going to talk about what a Sybil-resistant money Lego that will allow other people to solve this problem, what might look like. So what is Sybil-resistance? Sybil-resistance is the ability to create sock puppet resistance and digital identities that are hard to manufacture. And what that allows us to do is to go from one token, one vote DAOs, which are inherently plutocratic, to one human, one vote DAOs, which are more democratic. And if we want to make Web3 more accessible to everyday humans who do not have a ton of capital, then giving them access to more democratic DAOs is how we provide utility, which will then allow blockchains to go mainstream. This is a problem that I know really well because of my work at Gitcoin. Has anyone heard of or used Gitcoin Grants in the audience? Yes. For those of you watching from home, got about 60% of the audience using Gitcoin Grants. Why have we all used Gitcoin Grants? Well, Gitcoin Grants is a crowdfunding campaign that matches contributions to your favorite open source projects and public goods. And the way that it works is that if two grants have the same amount of capital raised, but grant one has way more contributions, then grant one will get way more of the matching amount. Why is this cool? Well, number one, your $1 or $10 donation can be matched with hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars of match. So if you want to get people off their butts and contributing to the open source project software that they care about, that their bags rely upon, if you want to get them to contribute to stopping climate change, if you want to get them to contribute to digital privacy technology, giving them a 100x match on their own capital is a deeply valuable way of getting them to do that on an agent-specific perspective. One of the coolest things about Gitcoin Grants is in addition to the $70 million of public goods that has been funded on Gitcoin Grants, we're creating a collective intelligence system. So this graph right here, every node in the network is a user, and every is a user or a grant, and every edge in the network is a transaction. So you're looking at a mesh network of the Ethereum community's preferences about which projects it cares about funding. So we're building higher resolution democracy, whereas instead of voting once every 4 years for someone to represent you, you're mapping your preferences of what ecosystem goods that you care deeply about using quadratic funding. And each one of these people have gotten off their bum to fund public goods because they can be matched with $100 worth of matching in their contributions using quadratic funding, which is the matching formula that optimizes for the preferences of the poor and the many over the rich and the few. But there is a problem with Gitcoin Grants and Sybil-resistance. And Sybil-resistance is it. If I am grant number 2, I can basically juice my matching amount by just making up new identities, which shifts the ecosystem preference map from the preferences of the poor and the many to the preferences of the rich and the few if you can easily manufacture new identities. And that, my friends, is how I stumbled upon the problem of Sybil-resistance. Gitcoin Grants is a castle in the sky without Sybil-resistance. If we cannot stop people from manufacturing accounts, then basically the foundation of Gitcoin does not work. So basically you've got Gitcoin, which relies on Gitcoin Grants, which relies on quadratic funding, which is the matching formula that optimizes for the preferences of everyday citizens, which relies on Sybil-resistance, and that is why I'm focused on Sybil-resistance in this talk. If we are successful in solving Sybil-resistance for Gitcoin, we could export that as a money Lego that the rest of the ecosystem could use. And we can take the entire ecosystem from one token, one vote, which is dominated by capital and inherently plutocratic, to one human, one vote DAOs, which are inherently more friendly to everyday citizens in the world. And in a world in which 99% of the world has their financial lives being their jobs and their engagement in their local community and not their capital and their investments, it is very important to be able to solve this problem. Through the prism of Sybil-resistance, we could engineer more quadratic funding, more quadratic voting, universal basic income DAOs. We could measure the Gini coefficients of the ecosystems that we're building. We could build data collectives in which we can band together and sell our data and earn from that. And we can build one person, one vote DAOs. And that is why I'm really At first, I wasn't so excited to have the Sybil resistance problem, but now that we've gotten our arms around it, I'm excited to be solving this problem with the work that Gitcoin has done. So that is why Sybil resistance is an important problem to address. Basically, we're going from one token, one vote DAOs to one human, one vote DAOs. And this is how we're going to solve the problem with leveraging the network that Gitcoin has built. So I think in order to start characterizing the Sybil resistance problem, we're going to first have to meet our adversaries. Anytime there is capital at stake in one of these token economic systems, there are going to be adversarial games. The blue team is the people at Gitcoin DAO who are defending the system against Sybil attacks. The red team are the rationally economic actors who are trying to attack the system and get money out of the matching pool. And the infinite evolutionary game of Sybil resistance is what has developed at Gitcoin DAO. So let's meet our adversaries. Script kiddies. I was once one of these young script kiddies. All they're doing is downloading from the internet different packages that will allow them to manufacture different Sybil attacks. They have no fundamental economic advantages. They're just able to use the internet. You've got petty criminals, which are one level up in sophistication level from the script kiddies. They might be a little bit organized. There might be a group of them working together. And let's keep in mind that not everyone who is a Sybil attacker is necessarily a bad person. You can just be rationally, economically incented to Sybil attack, and you might be doing it for that reason. There was an attack on Solana a few weeks ago in which one of the devs manufactured a bunch of accounts to make their protocol look like it was being used. I just think it's funny. I think Solana is a great ecosystem, but I think it's just funny that DeFi devs are actually doing this. Organized crime. So one level up of sophistication is the mob. They're manufacturing identity in order to attack the system. And then one level up from that is North Korea. You've got rogue state actors that are issuing credentials that are trying to manufacture identities. So now that we have met our adversaries, let us characterize the Sybil resistance game. The first criteria for the Sybil resistance game on Gitcoin and beyond, which is key to understanding if we are going to move to one human, one vote DAOs, is the adversarial nature of this system. If there is economic reason to exploit a system, then there will be adversaries that will exploit this system. I'm from Boulder, Colorado. I love kumbaya, granola, good vibes, and everything that comes with that. But we have to think adversarially if we're going to get to the place where there is good vibes. And that means solving for the adversarial nature of this system. Each of the economic actors that are my adversaries in the Sybil resistance game might be motivated by money. They might be motivated by the laws. They might be motivated because they want to embarrass Gitcoin and they want to embarrass me. And that is fine. That is all part of the infinite evolutionary game that we are playing with Sybil resistance. Criteria number 1. Do you notice how I zero offset these criteria? It's because we're software engineers at Gitcoin. Criteria 1 is the need for privacy and sovereignty. So when I upload my identity information into Zuckerberg's Facebook, they own my identity forever. That data is not sovereign to me. That I do not have any guarantee that they, in their fiduciary obligation to their shareholders, are going to respect my privacy. We want to do better at Gitcoin. We want to upload your data into Ceramic, which is a data store that is sovereign to you. It is encrypted at rest with your private key, which means that not even Gitcoin can read your identity data. And because it is encrypted at rest, because not even Gitcoin can read your data, no one else can read your data unless you explicitly consent to using that. And that is a fundamentally different way of designing an identity system than what Zuckerberg or any of the Web 2 people have done. Criteria number 2, the need to avoid plutocracy. So if you're going to build an identity system, then can that identity system be captured itself by the needs of capital or any economic actor? A layer of governance on top of this system that makes sure that you are maintaining the need to have privacy, to have sovereignty, to be fair to individual economic actors is an important criteria to involve into the system. Criteria number 3 is collusion. Basically, the way collusion works is that I will go to Gitcoin and I will say, hey, each of you can donate $1 to my grant, and my grant will get $100. I will give you $5 each to use your legitimate identities in order to attack the system. That is what is called collusion. It is a layer above the problem of Sybil resistance, and it is something that any rational one human, one vote system is going to have to deal with. Criteria number 4. the need to build in systemic defensibility. This is actually something that if you hear Vitalik talk about proof-of-stake blockchain networks, when he talks about the consensus mechanism, it is much cheaper to defend proof-of-stake than it is to attack proof-of-stake. If I attack proof-of-stake, my stake gets slashed in the Ethereum consensus protocol. And we need to build the same thing into a Sybil-resistance protocol. We need to make it much cheaper to defend for the blue team to defend the system than it is for the attackers to get money out of the system. So let me introduce you to the Sybil-resistance battleground. There are the end users, some of which are benign actors and some of which are malignant actors. You don't know which one is which. And they go through quadratic funding, which is the beautiful matching multiple, and they're able to get $25,000 in matching. This is as of Gitcoin Grants round 1, which was 4 years ago. Since then, we have advanced a little bit in the art of Sybil resistance. We now have $3 million worth of matching. And this is a key point. You have to scale up your Sybil resistance as you scale up the amount of money that is at stake in the system. And we've now got our end users going through something called Gitcoin Passport, which is a sovereign, privacy-respecting, plutocratic-resistant protocol for defending against Sybil resistance. And once you get your passport stamped, you're able to get access to those matching funds. And we go through something called pairwise quadratic funding, which is a bunch of fancy Vitalik level math that prevents you all from colluding in the system. And then you get the $3 million worth of matching. Oh, we've also got distributed data team that is analyzing the data, looking for attacks, reporting back to governance, and there's a whole blue team defensive system that is built into this that allows the blue team to catch the red team. The need to build in network effects. If you build the most perfectly academic identity system and no one ever uses it, does it make a sound? That is the problem of network effects. Because other people are using Gitcoin Grants, people are using Gitcoin Passport, and therefore there is data in Gitcoin Passport, therefore there is legitimacy in using Gitcoin Passport. And it is bootstrapping these network effects that is extremely important if we are ever to meet the problems of identity in the real world. More stamps get created on Gitcoin Passport, which means that Gitcoin Passport has more utility to people who are trying to solve Sybil resistance, which means there are more users who are using Gitcoin Passport, and the system repeats in this virtuous cycle that hopefully will span outwards until we destroy Facebook as an identity provider. Can you imagine that day? I hope to come back in Messari Mainnet in 2026 and talk about how we're bigger than Facebook and more legitimate than Facebook. And the reason why we're going to be more legitimate than any other identity provider out there is because Gitcoin Passport is a modular forkable protocol. We know that from political theory that the right of exit is an important part of maintaining the legitimacy of any of these systems. If you don't agree with how Gitcoin, the DAO, is creating its passport, you can fork it, you can add in your own stamps, you can add in your own architecture, you can sub out the data of it, and if enough people agree with you, you can bootstrap your own network effects. And if we help you solve your Sybil resistance problem in your own way by doing that, then I think that we've done our part by creating a modular and forkable and legitimate protocol. Criteria 7, decentralization. As I just said, anyone can fork Gitcoin Passport, create more decentralization in how identity is done, and I think that that is an important part of this. The evolutionary nature of this game. This is an iterative evolutionary game between the blue team and the red team, and you have to sit back and you have to just think of it in that way. We are speedrunning Home Alone 1 to Home Alone 2 to Home Alone 3. The attackers are getting better and more sophisticated each time, but so are the defenses. And you just have to respect that this is going to be an infinite game that is going to happen forever. Gitcoin's job is just to take the grants rounds and build in feedback loops that make them systemically more defensible than they are attackable. So instant feedback from the protocol when you attack it, daily feedback with hooks into governance to make it legitimate, and quarterly feedback as the system evolves over time. Which brings me to my final point, which is a Sybil-resistant money Lego. What will Gitcoin Grants round 69 look like? Look past the mimetic number of Gitcoin Grants round 69, which will be in 2026, if you want to do the math. It will be anti-fragile to many types of attackers. It will be privacy and sovereignty respective. It will avoid collusion. It will have network effects. It will enable innovation at the edges. It will not be capturable, and it will embrace the evolutionary nature of this game. What we have built at Gitcoin is a three-state machine. We take any on-chain or off-chain data, store it via an ETL process, which is just fancy developer speak for extract, transform, load. which basically means that we store it in ceramic as a verifiable credential. This is important. These are open data standards. Verifiable credentials is the W3C standard for identity. Ceramic is a distributed data store network which can store encrypted at rest data on it, and it's sovereign to you. It's privacy respecting to you. And then we aggregate those scores into a personhood score, in which basically you have a personhood score of 10, then we have $10 worth of Sybil resistance in your identity, and we can give you $10 worth of matching on Gitcoin Grants, or if you're doing any other activity in the ecosystem that is economically at risk to Sybil resistance, then you can have $10 worth of benefit up to that. That is what your personhood score is, and it is the only thing that we expose on chain. It's really fucked up that you go into a liquor store and you have to prove that you're over 21, and you have to give that person your address, your date of birth, your eye color, and your full name. And I think it's pretty creepy that that is the precedent that people have for their identity. We've built this whole thing from the ground up to be privacy preserving in this pipeline. And we built this thing to inhale as many credentials as possible. We inhale your proof of humanity. We inhale your ENS. We inhale your POAPs. We inhale your Twitter. We inhale your Google. Any on-chain or off-chain data can and will be put into a stamp onto Gitcoin Grants. And that's because we are super serious about solving Sybil resistance. So without further ado, I give you Gitcoin Passport, which is basically, thanks. Whew. Got 13 seconds left. I'm ready to land this plane. All right, so basically, TLDR, we're taking this problem really seriously. We believe that one human, one vote DAOs are extremely important for the ecosystem, and we've done a lot of work so that you don't have to. Integrate Gitcoin Passport into your DApp with one line of code. I might be being a little bit facetious here. It's actually like 10 lines of code, but it's a lot less work than we've had to do. And so Gitcoin Passport is our Sybil-resistant money Lego, which we think is important to moving to one human, one vote DAOs. And I hope to move to an ecosystem that has utility for the average, the median member of humanity, not just the people who are moneyed. And we're going to do that with Gitcoin Passport. And I'll just end by saying, respect to the red team. You want to get the money out of Gitcoin Grants, but we ain't going to give it to you. And that's because of Gitcoin Passport. Thanks, everyone. See you later.